What if the world's most famous doomed lovers didn't die? What if one came back as a zombie? We're exploring how films from Zeffirelli's timeless romance to the zombie rom-com Warm Bodies reinvent Romeo and Juliet to match their generation's idea of love, conflict, and destiny. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet tells the story of two young lovers from feuding families whose secret marriage and desperate attempts to be together ultimately end in their tragic deaths. But each film adaptation transforms this foundation differently. Zeffirelli's 1968 version presents classical romance with authentic Renaissance settings. Luhrmann's 1996 Romeo plus Juliet updates it to a neon-soaked modern Verona beach, and 2013's Warm Bodies reimagines the story entirely as a zombie apocalypse where Undead R falls for human Julie, potentially bridging the gap between their warring species. Shakespeare's timeless tale of young love has inspired countless cinematic interpretations, each reimagining the iconic balcony scene in its own way. Franco Zeffirelli's 1968 Romeo and Juliet made the story feel real by casting actual teenagers as the star-crossed lovers. Leonard Whiting's Romeo is restless and smitten, while Olivia Hussey's Juliet radiates innocence, bringing Shakespeare's verse to life. The lush moonlit garden, filmed with natural light, turned the scene into a cinematic fairy tale, letting glances and pauses carry as much weight as the poetry. Zeffirelli's balcony scene became the definitive screen image, shaping how audiences imagine Romeo and Juliet's romance. Baz Luhrmann flips the scene into a neon-lit, poolside makeout, turning Shakespeare into a 90s soap spectacle. Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, already teen icons, make the romance feel authentic and MTV-ready. Their underwater kiss became a pop culture moment, blending Elizabethan dialogue with modern visuals for a playful clash of old and new. Warm Bodies pushes the concept further, staging its balcony scene at Julie's fortified suburban compound. Teresa Palmer's Julie leans over a weathered railing, half pleading, half scolding R, while Nicholas Holt's R gazes up with boyish earnestness. Stripped of traditional romance, the moment feels raw and intimate. Two impossible lovers bridging the gap between fear, trust, and the human and undead. It's awkward, strange, and all the more tender for it. Each adaptation reflects its era's understanding of conflict and division. Zeffirelli's 1968 film presents the Montague-Capulet feud as aristocratic honor culture, with elaborate costumes and formal sword fights that feel historically grounded. The violence stems from inherited tradition and masculine pride, very much a product of its time's romanticized view of the past. Luhrmann's version updates this to gang warfare, complete with branded guns and corporate logos, making the families feel like modern crime syndicates. The conflict becomes about capitalism and media sensationalism as much as ancient grudges. Warm Bodies makes the boldest leap by replacing family feuds with species war. Humans versus zombies becomes a metaphor for any tribal division, racial, political, generational. The film suggests that our differences might be less fundamental than we think, that even the divide between living and undead could be bridged through empathy and love. Perhaps most tellingly, each film treats its female lead differently, reflecting changing attitudes toward women's agency. Zeffirelli's Juliet, while spirited, ultimately remains bound by patriarchal expectations. She's reactive rather than proactive, swept along by fate and family pressure. Interestingly, the film's casting of 15-year-old Olivia Hussey brought unprecedented authenticity to the role, though this choice later sparked controversy when Hussey sued Paramount in 2022 over a nude scene she claimed was filmed without proper consent. Luhrmann's Juliet has more modern sensibility, but still operates within the tragedy's constraints. Claire Danes, then 16, brought a more assertive energy to the character, though she couldn't escape the story's predetermined ending. The film faced criticism from Shakespeare purists who felt the MTV-style editing and gun violence cheapened the original text, but it successfully made the story accessible to younger audiences. Julie, in Warm Bodies, represents the biggest departure. She actively drives the reconciliation between humans and zombies, teaching R to be human while convincing her own people to see beyond their prejudices. Rather than being a passive victim of family feuds, she becomes the architect of peace. The film consciously avoids the damsel in distress trope by making Julie the catalyst for positive change. The most radical difference lies in how these adaptations handle Shakespeare's tragic conclusion. Both Zeffirelli and Luhrmann remain faithful to the double suicide, though Luhrmann's version feels more like a music video tragedy with its stylized gun violence and operatic score. His modern update sparked debate about whether the flashy visuals and contemporary gang warfare glorified youth violence, though others argued it made Shakespeare's themes more relevant to 90s audiences. Warm Bodies completely inverts this by choosing hope over despair. Instead of love conquering through death, love literally conquers death itself. Ours transformation from zombie to human suggests that connection and empathy can overcome seemingly insurmountable barriers. Where Shakespeare's original argues that hate destroys love, Warm Bodies proposes that love can transform hate. Critics debate whether this love as cure concept oversimplifies complex trauma, but the film's optimistic ending reflects contemporary audiences' desire for stories where genuine connection can heal even the most broken situation. What makes these adaptations fascinating is how they preserve Shakespeare's core themes while completely transforming their context. Whether it's Renaissance Verona, MTV-era Verona Beach, or post-apocalyptic wasteland, the story of star-crossed lovers transcends its setting because it speaks to universal human experiences: the power of first love, the tragedy of inherited conflicts, and the hope that connection might overcome division. Warm Bodies proves that even adding rotting flesh can't diminish Romeo and Juliet's emotional impact. It just gives us new ways to understand how love might literally bring the dead back to life. So yes, Romeo and Juliet can have a happy ending, but it requires reimagining not just the story, but our faith in love's transformative power. This is Ladies First, watching women in movies. Here, we empower women by reviewing and discussing films that highlight their stories, struggles, and achievements. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.